All right, I want to move to an important story that isn't getting nearly enough attention. Australia is running out of hardwood timber, and it's impacting a booming housing sector. If not fixed, of course, it'll impact the jobs that are driving this post-COVID recovery. According to modelling from the CFMEU, that's the construction industry, they need some 2.1 million cubic metres of timber framing this year alone. But Australia's sawmills, they can only produce 1.8 million cubic metres. With housing approvals at record highs driven by the Morrison government's home builder scheme, well, industry are crying out for help. They want a solution. For more on this, I'm joined from Canberra by the CEO of the Master Builders Association, Denita Wawn. Denita, I keep hearing about this anecdotally, and I thought it might have been just a supply constraints in particular regional areas or pockets of Australia. But reading more and more, it's a big problem. Give us a sense of it.
Well, Peter, I think it's shown by the statistics that we usually import around 20 to 25% of our timber, structural timber, but we're only getting about 7 or 8% of it, and we're in the middle of a boom. And so we've got a shortage in the country, but however, we've also got sawmills underutilised and logs staying in situ. So we've got some logistical challenges to face, but equally there is a longer term issue here. Have we got our sovereign capabilities right to meet our housing needs in the future? And it's really highlighted the problem that we're currently facing. But there is a critical shortage. We've just got our survey out today that shows timber shortages is the most acute problem facing the industry at the moment.
Okay, so this is a case of the anecdotal being right. I'll get to the sovereign capacity. I think it's critically important in just a moment. Give us a sense of what this is doing, once they grind to a halt on a building site, what it's doing to jobs and the broader sort of construction build.
Well, obviously, structural timber is critical for residential building. The vast majority of our homes, particularly on the East Coast, utilise timber. And as a consequence, instead of 4-week delays, we're experiencing 20-week delays in accessing timber. That means things grind to a halt and the subsequent work on a building that heavily relies on up to 40 trades cannot continue. So that means also no progress payments, and therefore there are cash flow issues for the builder that bears the brunt of these problems, and clients of course are getting increasingly frustrated. So the focus for us is being, how do we solve this solution? Are there domestic solutions? Are there international solutions? Because this is critical not only for our members but also the community at large that have been so focused on home building, and as you quite rightly say, that is really central to economic recovery in this country.
And look, clearly I'm not a builder, right? So I underappreciated, I thought it must have just pertained to weatherboard homes, but of course I underappreciated how much most homes require in terms of structural timber. That's also the challenge with the boom.
Absolutely. Virtually, as I said, virtually every home, regardless of what they're clad in, is requiring structural timber. There are some exceptions, such as in Western Australia, where there's heavy reliance on double brick. But nevertheless, we think that we're anywhere between 300,000 to 500,000 cubic metres short, and that is predominantly because of the lack of imports. The issue about imports is every single first world country is utilising housing as an economic stimulus, and the US is buying up structural timber and paying more than what we can afford. So we've got to look at alternatives, and we've got to look at alternatives fast.
Okay, well, we've got no shortage of land in this country. We've got plenty of sunshine, plenty of water in the right places. Why aren't we growing our own hardwood here?
Well, we're growing wood, but not necessarily enough of it. We've obviously got to realise that nearly 20% of our plantations were lost in those devastating bushfires. So that has certainly had an impact in terms of capabilities. But equally, we simply do not grow enough, and we need to get far better coordination between the investment community, the plantation operators and landowners. You would think in this day of people people looking at the capacity to grow more trees, you'd be able to get investors, but we haven't been able to do that. So certainly from a master builder's perspective, we are trying to now encourage relevant parties to get together and increase investment in plantations for the future of housing Australians.
And is there a concern in some of the hard left components of the environmental movement? They don't like any trees grown, they don't like any trees, well, they like trees grown, but they don't like any trees cut down, even those plantation forests that are grown to be cut down.
Obviously, part of the shortage problems we're experiencing at the moment is some decisions that were made 10, 15 years ago where we simply decided to reduce the land accessible for plantation timber. I think there needs to be a new national conversation about that. We're not wanting at all to start logging native and national forestry, but there is an opportunity for plantation timber. There are jobs in it. It means we can house more Australians and we've got greater sovereignty in terms of meeting the demands of the industry. And more importantly, there's opportunities also in terms of those carbon offsets. So it's a win-win all round. I can't understand why we're not seeing more investment into plantation timber, but that's a more longer term issue. The issue for us, Peter, at the moment is how on earth can we get more structural timber on the ground at a reasonable price for our members, and that's certainly the focus of our attention in the coming weeks.
Well, thank you for highlighting it. Thank you for reminding us too that timber stores carbon emissions. The Green don't like to remind us about that, but you do. Denita Wawn, thank you for your time.
Pleasure.